Hey everyone, today I'm going to be discussing the book The Hate You Give, which is written by Angie Thomas. In this book talk, I hope to address the plot points, the main characters, how you can integrate this book into your curriculum, and how to get the best results from your students when teaching this. So I hope you enjoy. Okay, so for the audience age level, I would suggest teaching this book to upper level secondary students, so probably within the range of 11th and 12th grade students, maybe 10th, but I would keep it more on the older side. Um, and I chose this age level because of the strong language that is used throughout the book. There are many curse words used, and also the adult themes. This book deals with violence, hate crimes, racism, drugs, also gang violence. So a lot of these concepts can be a lot for younger age levels. So I would really suggest just keeping it with upper level secondary students. Okay, so the three main characters that I pulled out of the book that I thought really drove the plot were Star Carter, who is the main character and narrator of the novel. We see everything from Star's perspective. So everything that happens, we are inside Star's mind and see things from how she sees them. So she is the one who is struggling with the impact of Black hate crimes in her community. This book deals with the second hate crime that has deeply affected her and her friendships. So we see the passion really stirred from her. And then the second character is Khalil Hill, who is Star's best friend from birth, and they have just been reconnected in the book in the beginning, and you can tell right away that their relationship is super strong. And then he is actually the victim of the hate crime that drives the plot. So he is a very pivotal character in the novel, even though he doesn't have a huge live role in it. And then the third character that I pulled was Maverick Carter, who is Star's father and is also a past gang member. He is the one who encourages Star to speak out against the violence because he knows the impact that gangs have on the community after being a member of one. And then he also knows, as an African American member of society, how these hate crimes affect their culture within society. So he is a very huge part of this book because without him, Star would not have chosen to become an advocate for such things. So the book is set in a split setting, so it takes place in an urban neighborhood as well as a wealthy suburban area, and both areas are fictitious, but both play a huge role in the driving of the plot. The plot of this book is centered around the violence committed toward and within the Black community. So Star Carter, who is the main character and narrator of the book, has experienced multiple hate crimes in her life, and this book follows the death of her best friend Khalil, which is the most prominent hate crime that she has experienced, the most vivid and the most recent. So after having been witness to Khalil's murder, which was committed by a police officer, she lives with the consequences, has nightmares, and all of the trauma that came with it. So after dealing with all of that, Star decides that she can't live in fear, and this fear stems from her split life between the urban community and the wealthy community because she doesn't want the suburban area where she goes to school, where all of her new friends are, to turn against her for being different and for experiencing these things. And I think also there's a fear of everything getting brushed under the rug because this crime was committed by a police officer. So these are all things that she deals with internally, and decides ultimately that she must speak out for her late best friend in order to attempt to restore justice to him and her community. So the book follows her journey to activism and the struggle to get there very closely. For intertextuality, I picked out two writings and a movie that I thought would be interesting to incorporate into different lessons. The first one that I thought of immediately is Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. She is such a prominent African American female voice in the history of writing, and Still I Rise is such a well-known poem, but it does deal with the hatred and the comments made that stem from her differences in community. And pretty much, as the title says, like, despite my differences and despite how others treat me, I am who I am and I will come out on top. So I think that this would be a really good writing to incorporate to show individuality and confidence within our differences. The second piece that I decided to pull out was Hairspray, which is a musical movie, and this movie really follows the idea that segregation should not happen. So this is a completely different community than what we see in the book, The Hate You Give, with the white community really coming together to support the black community. So, like in The Hate You Give, we have a white officer who attacks and kills a black member of society when really we should be doing the opposite, and especially police officers should be trying to maintain the safety of everyone in society. So I think Hairspray would be a really good movie to pull clips from, specifically the protest scene where we see whites coming together to support those who are different and celebrating each other's differences. And then the last book that I pulled was Wonder. This book deals with identity and self more than racial issues. And so I think for those students who struggle with accepting their differences, be they racial or anything else, Wonder would be a really, really good book to pull in because this book also celebrates the differences that each of us have and the unique qualities that each person brings to the table. Okay, so I chose 3 creative learning experiences for this unit, and the first one is the current events journal, which would require students to research a current event similar to that which had happened in the book, and that would require them to read an article or two on the event and write a journal as if they had experienced the crime in some way, whether that be watching it as someone who had been around at the time of the crime, or as if they had experienced it firsthand as the victim, or a family member of the victim, or someone who had known the victim, etc. And then the second one was putting ourselves in the shoes of the main character Star and writing a eulogy for Khalil's funeral. And this would require creative writing and tapping into the emotions and the memories that Star may have had with Khalil, and etc. And then the third one is the personal characterization journal. I've done this one with students in the past and they really like it. So essentially it's just a journal of what makes you you. Choosing songs or words to describe you. They can do this really any way, pictures, anything. And then having students compare their journals to show that nobody is exactly the same and that differences go beyond skin tone and that all differences, whether they be visible or not, deserve to be celebrated. Okay, and then I pulled 3 essential questions that would just really get the conversation going in the classroom. The first one that I pulled is the question, what does it mean to be different? And I think it is really important to get students to see that our differences are more than just our skin tone. And in fact, we may have more in common with someone who looks different than us than we do with someone who looks similar to us. So that's just another way to get students thinking about what different means and what different looks like and how we can celebrate our differences and our individuality. And then the second question that I pulled was, if you were stars friends at school, would you get involved in advocacy? Why or why not? This really causes students to look at the big picture and think empathetically and think, if I were in that person's shoes, what would I do? This is going to be a hard question, but a good question for students to grapple with. And then the last one that I chose is, where does identity come from? So this could be a really very big discussion depending on the school that you're in. For Christian schools like the one that I grew up in, it would be a pretty simple answer, but for public schools or schools who don't identify with a religion, this could be a huge and important question for students to realize where their worth and their identity comes from, and also help them to appreciate the identities of others around them.